Let me pull him up. I won't make you look at him too long. That face, Mandy. Tell us what's going on. Well, no, first tell us how you learned him.
Okay, so the King of Wands, he's kind of like the top of the tree. You don't get any higher than the kings when it comes to the minors, really. I mean, I don't know, he's just the kind of like the leader of the whole suit of wands, and it's kind of like no matter how amazing the queen is, ultimately the king has the last say. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like there is still further to go than the queen, and the king is it. So he represents, and this would be for all of the kings, but but the King of Wands, he absolutely kind of like, he represents the kind of like, the leader of the football team or whatever. He's kind of Simon Cowell, or I don't know. Do you know what it's just, he's the absolute, he's as far as it goes, and he's the big presence. He is the big personality. I would say he's quite probably, being the King of Wands, I would say he's probably very famous in his field. He's the one that is kind of like known. He is the face of it all. So it's kind of, oh, what was it? That person that discovered evolution.
Darwin.
That's him. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? He's known for that. And
Yes.
if you read into it, there were actually other people that discovered it, but he was the one that got it out there. And so he kind of owns it. He's made himself the kind of like the known one for such and such a thing. It's the big deal. So that's my sort of perception of the King of Wands, that, he's the face of the whole thing, and he's just the ultimate decider.
Yeah, the ultimate authority. And
Yeah.
the way I see the King of Wands, I know he's that ultimate authority in the family of wands, but I always wondered if he wasn't a bit of a rabble rouser. He's like the other kings, or most of the other courts. He's sitting on the throne, but he is in no way stagnant like the other kings. He's looks like he's ready to jump up with his stick in his hand, like he's got it down to the ground where he's going to jump up with it, and he's got his hand pulled back in a fist. And
Right.
he's got his little lizard there, and I always wondered if that lizard was an advisor. And sometimes the lizard changes in my head. That sounded horrible. As an advisor to keep the king from losing his cool, or a little instigator to egg the king on. So I'd say he's the most hot-headed of the kings. Look at that face. The man's got a temper. And if he knows how to rein that temper in, he can use that fire as passion to get people to follow. But I'd say he's the one most likely to lose his temper, usually in the reverse position. But he's the one that's going to jump up and join in the fight. He's not like the knight. He's going to
Okay.
be up in the battle.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just think he's a natural kind of leader or ruler. I would imagine his face is all over magazines, what have you. Do you know what I mean? He's not shy in any way, shape, or form. He's very, very confident. He's very kind of proactive. He very much kind of believes in whatever it is he's kind of like doing, and he's got all his people out there kind of working for him.
Yeah,
And
and
I would
willing to fight.
say his queen is managing it all for him, and he's just sitting there going yes, no, whatever, But
Yeah.
he's the one that you want the approval of, if that makes any sense.
Right.
He's he's the big charisma. His light shines the brightest. This is how I always saw him. It was a bit like if I walked into an audition and there was a panel of people judging me, he'd be the one that I sensed. It'd be I would just sense him there. He'd be the one that I'd want to impress, you know.
Like Simon Cowell, like you
Yeah,
said, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think his presence is massive. But I must admit, I absolutely always, because we read in reverse, we do read in reverse, I always saw him as a huge positive and a huge green light, you know, as like, is this a project that should be that we should go for? King of Wands comes out, absolutely, kind of go for it. I would, because he's such an extreme, he's right up there at the end of the spectrum, you know. It doesn't go past there. And in the upright position, I just saw him as being very full on, very confident, and very much kind of like, take the necessary action, you can't lose. That was my instinct for a long time about the King of Wands upright.
And we get that way with particular cards, especially if they inspire what these courts as we know them do inspire. But tell us why we should never ever get stuck with just one definition for a card.
Well, I hate the King of Wands now. I really hate him because he seriously let me down in a reading kind of recently. I don't know, what, 6 months ago, something like that. And he basically, it was a regular client of mine, and it was a business reading, and it was a new business venture. And the particular question that the King of Wands answered, what he was engaging in a new contract with a person that he'd never done a contract with before. And there were all sorts of questions. I mean, it was a big spread. It wasn't like a one card reading at all. It was a big spread. And to be fair, there were a lot of other cards in the spread, not just the King of Wands. But the specific question that the King of Wands answered was, can this person that he was doing the contract with be trusted? And the King of Wands came up upright, and I went, absolutely yes.
I would have said the same thing.
I know. It was an immediate yes. And to be fair, there were other cards in the reading that were flagging up, warning things, but I never related. I can't explain it. Even though I said the basic warning things, that fundamental, can this be trusted to enter into this contract with this person, was a yes. And that rang so strongly because it was the King of Wands. It rang so strongly and so brightly that it was kind of, it made the rest of the reading a little bit like rose-coloured glasses. It's like, we've already heard that this can be trusted, like the rest is just academic, but it was actually the rest that was really telling us this person was very good at kind of being convincing. I wished the universe had sent me the King of Wands reversed. As simple as that. I would have got it. That it was kind of like, puts on a good show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Came up upright. It was like, appears to be trusted. But it was giving all the other clues in the rest of the reading. But the client had had enough readings with me that they had some understanding of the tarot. We had photos of the reading. We had a written down of what all the questions were. As I say, this was a very, very sort of well-established client of mine, and blah, blah, blah. But I have to say, this was a disaster. Like this contract that he went into, which he didn't blame me, but he took the tarot into consideration when, deciding to go ahead with it because it sort of felt good. I'm not even going to say kind of like what happened, but it was seriously a disaster. It was a life-changingly bad decision to go into this with this person. Yeah, I felt. Yeah.
And as a reader, that shakes you to your core.
Oh my God, I felt sick. Yeah. Yeah.
But when that happens, because it's going to happen to all of us. We're going to have days where we didn't catch anything or it's not anything, but something very valuable. We're going to have days where we misinterpret. Hell, we have a hard enough time interpreting each other as human beings than sometimes interpreting the universe. So the best thing we can do is say, okay, I misinterpreted. I made a mistake. Mandy, you don't know how brave you are even telling this story, admitting I made a mistake. I
made a
bow
mistake.
to you.
Yeah, I don't know whether I didn't quite ask the right question. Like,
Oh, you've already said it.
I don't know.
You've already said what happened with those cards around it, indicating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, it was kind of like there were other cards that came up that was sort of like saying, don't take any big risks. Or there was all sorts, I can't remember it all now. There was all sorts of other things, but the great big kind of King of Wands up there, so strong. Can this be trusted? One look at it. Yes, 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 go for it. And the rest of the reading was like, well, just be a bit cautious, just be a bit careful, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, why didn't I go back and sort of question that King of Wands so strong when there were other warning cards coming up after it, if that makes sense?
It absolutely does. And
I shudder now every time the King of Wands comes up in a reading, to be honest, because it's like, what is it saying? I'm very, very wary of it now.
We'll have to work on that.
Yeah, I know.
But it's definitely, this happened, and Mandy did not put the cards away. Mandy did not say, I can't read. She realized that we are all humans. We make mistakes in everything we do. It's part of being human. You could be a freaking professional baker and still flatten a cake, right?
Absolutely,
It
yeah.
happens. So we accept it. And this is when hindsight comes in. With tarot, you are going to be learning for the rest of ever. You are going to be learning to look back at previous reads, look forward, and see how to see things different. If you were to do the same reading now, Mandy, is there anything about that spread itself that this King of Wands could have pointed to you on what they needed to be careful about or what they could do to mitigate the risks?
There was another big clue in the reading that was there was another question about the person they were entering into the contract with. What do we need to kind of like know from this person's past history that is relevant, right? Something like that. And I got justice reversed. Big clue. And I said, instead of saying this person can't be trusted, because I did that King of Wands, right? I said something like, I don't think this person is necessarily telling you everything, right? I think, they're telling you what on a need to know basis. And I should have taken much more notice of that justice reversed, right? I got so overexcited about the King of Wands in isolation, that everything else I watered down on hindsight.
And thank you. Thank you for sharing this, because I know it's difficult. But that what you just said, we truly want our to be happy for our clients. I had a student just Friday last week where she was doing a this or that for a client. And I know we're talking more about a reading than the King of Wands, but she was doing a this or that for a hard situation, and she was having trouble because she didn't feel like she was getting an answer for her question. So she brought the spread to me, and I said, "You've got an answer. You were looking for a happy ending."
Right,
And
yeah,
sometimes in our lives, we don't get happy endings. You feel like the question isn't being answered because every every outcome on this or that is
yeah,
difficult, but which one is the best one for your client? And then
yes,
she was like, "Oh, I got it. There isn't always a 10 of cups ending, and we want
yeah,
joy and happiness for our clients." So that's another part of bias that's
mhm,
truly even harder to get through than
yeah,
any other kind, is because we want to see the best. We don't want to become negative Nellies and doom singers by glomming on that justice in reverse. But we also don't want to get so overexcited or so happy with
yeah.
joy that we are it can only mean this. And that's a hard example.
It's a
That's
hard lesson to learn, and you know, I've done thousands of readings probably, and I got absolutely carried away because I liked this client and he was excited. He came to the reading very excited about this new contract, you know. And I was so pleased when that King of Wands came up, like, you know, can it be trusted? Yes. And it was just like, oh, it was, you know, oh, let's just, whatever else I turn over, we're going to kind of make it work. Oh, big mistake, you know. But he didn't blame me. I mean, there were other kind of things, you know, but he came back to me to say that card, that one card, how comes that came up?
so what in this King of Wands, in hindsight, can you see that might have gone hand in hand with that justice in reverse?
Well, the thing was, I think the point is, this is why it's good to do bigger spreads. I think you need to kind of like not allow yourself, if you've got an extreme card, right? And the King of Wands is an extreme.
He is.
He, you know, especially like if he's upright, you can get so carried away with that. This is what I learned. You need to see where there's other things genuinely in the reading that are either taking away from that extremity in some way and making you kind of look at it again, look for those warnings, or there may be other things in the reading that are backing it up so that there's lots of cards that are all looking positive. Then I think you can be more secure about being so positive about something in a very important situation. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
That's the point, because
Right.
the rest of his reading was either full of warning cards or mediocre sort of cards. That was
Right.
the only one that shone out like this great big beacon of bright light, and it was actually saying he puts on a very good show. And
Yep.
I didn't read it like that. And I'm kicking myself, you know. It's made me really, really suspicious of the King of Wands. I now would only be enthusiastic about this card if I had other cards as well, confirming that I've read it right.
Yeah, and that's a
I had to share that
really,
example because it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me as a reader by far.
and it's a hard, and that had to be hard to share. But I love the way you explain, look at everything. Don't just see him. And yeah, that was a good show. That just hopefully you won't always see him as that con artist.
No,
I think the con artist would be more reflective of him in reverse,
exactly. That's why I trusted.
alone. Yeah.
I think the other thing is, I think what I did do right, to be fair, is if you are doing if you're doing an important reading for someone on an important issue, you must do a big spread.
Yes.
You must do a big. You can't do a one card reading for a really important matter. I mean, you can, but you know,
get all the information.
yeah. So, and you have to kind of respect the fact that the whole spread is answering the question, not just isolated cards that appeal to you.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, you have to take into account the whole thing, which
And
I did, but I can't explain it. I became so enthusiastic about such an enthusiastic card that the rest of it was like, I don't know. I don't know if it would be for to call it sugarcoating or just saying I just didn't want it to be bad after that. Like,
we want, and that's not a bad um trait, to want the best for the person in front of
yeah,
you. It's a beautiful trait. It's
yeah.
just, and honestly, Mandy, it doesn't matter how long we've been reading, we're going to have those readings that we look back on and say, wow, I missed that, or I wish I had done that different. It's going to happen, but it's going to happen, so it's not going to be the norm. As long as it's not the norm, we're okay. But some days we are going to misinterpret. Any reader out there who says I'm never wrong is full of shit and doesn't listen
Oh
to their
yeah, absolutely.
clients.
But the other thing is, as well, don't be afraid to give bad news. You
Right.
know, don't be afraid to say, you know, don't twist it or change it. There is no point, because if they then come back and say, you told me this was all going to be great or whatever, and look what's happened, you know, I mean, as I say, with that particular reading, I did tell him he wasn't getting the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I did tell him that. And I did tell him that not to take any silly risks. You know, and he admits all that. It was just that one card was delivered with so much enthusiasm and belief that it overshadowed the rest of the reading. It truly did.
Yeah.
And it was like, despite all of the warnings and blah blah blah, the King of Wands is up there saying, yes, you can trust me, go for it. And that was the kind of summary of the reading. Oh no, you know, that's
Yeah.
wrong. You can't do that.
Yeah.
I learned the real hard way on that one.
And we've definitely, all of us, I think, have learned the hard way if we've been reading it any length of time. And we say it all the time, you and I both. We say, don't lock a card into a meaning. You've seen me with cards where I do it with. I mean, we've got to fight it. We got to. So it's a hard lesson, but one that needs to be
And
shared.
I also kind of like feel, from a technical point of view, maybe go a little bit, tread a little bit carefully when you're dealing with cards that are extremes, in whatever sense of the word, because if you're going to be so boldly giving a message because it's an extreme good or an extreme not so good, I think you need other cards around that to kind of verify, really confirm those extremes.
Yeah.
If it's surrounded by other cards that are sort of buying into it as well, then I kind of like feel you can more confidently say this is going to go really, really well according to this, or I'd be really careful about this.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you need to sort of blend the cards together more once you've got them all out. That's really important.
Very important. Thank you for sharing that. Dang.
Yeah.
I I usually see him in a very positive light, And
Yeah.
sometimes that fist catches my eye, and it's like somebody who's hot-headed and really either really ready for a fight or really ready to defend the underdog. Because that lizard might even just be the underdog or the under lizard,
Yeah.
you know. Um, I usually see him in a positive, proactive way,
Yeah.
but the way you described that spread, I could see, although I would have I'm taking that lesson from you too, because he's upright and we think of an upright king as a stand-up kind of guy. I can't say that I would have seen him any differently, not my spread.
I
So,
couldn't believe the universe sent him to me upright. And it was right at the beginning of the spread as well. It was one of the first questions.
mm,
But
yeah.
yeah,
And sometimes, it's like a phone receiver. Sometimes our signal is just not up to par. It's just, I wish we could find a really, really good way of figuring out when our signals are crossed.
yeah,
I do
yeah.
have a King of Wands I think you'll love.
Go on.
If you can, love the King of Wands. This is from the Everyday Enchantment Tarot.
Okay. Oh, yeah. He's really cool.
I love him. I
Oh,
think I can
yeah.
get
He's
him
very
right.
cool. Yeah. I
And
love
he's
that.
blind. He's got the
Oh,
stick
my
and a seeing
God.
eye dog, and he's at the head of the race with everybody cheering him on.
Wow.
He's
That's fantastic.
his disabilities, his limitations have not limited him.
That's brilliant, Sharon.
I
I
love
love
that
that.
card. This is the back of the deck. I'm gonna have to do a deck of the week on these.
Oh, you are.
This is just an
Yeah.
absolutely
I love that. That's amazing.
very happy,
Yeah.
positive
Yeah.
deck.
Yeah.
So I just really liked that King of Wands to show that get
Yeah.
out and do it and
Yeah.
not
Don't let anything.
afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't let anything kind of stop you. If you want to do it, do it.
Yep.
Make it work. Yeah.
And I like that one too because he's got such a, he's got his crowd with him, cheering him on and
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
showing him.
Fantastic. Yeah, really,
Yeah.
really great. Now, I think the King of Wands in reverse is a very dodgy character indeed. Like, I'd be so wary of it. I mean, now I'm even wary of him upright. But I'm just saying, in reverse, apart from a complete lack of energy, like which is the same interpretation as the Queen, I think he'd be very manipulative. I think he'd be very kind of nasty,
Abusive.
abusive. Yeah, yeah, very controlling in a very kind of and that he would appear to everybody else to be such a nice guy, you know.
Yeah, especially the way he has that fist curled up,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna beat you down. So in the reverse, he's definitely not even necessarily physical abuse. Mental abuse is
Oh yeah, yeah,
abuse
yeah,
too.
absolutely. Yeah.
But
I just think he would just be a really dodgy character in
yeah,
reverse.
yeah,
And I just think he's so capable of being so deceptive, right? Because he's got this big kind of overwhelmingly lovely personality that he even did it to me in the upright position.
yeah. Charm, complete charm. I have a feeling that whoever you were reading about was a charmer.
Yeah.
And
Well, to be fair, the guy's business partner went and met him and liked him so much that he did the kind of deal with him. So I wasn't the only one that was fooled by. Do you know what I'm saying? There was
right.
a real life kind of scenario.
And that
I
could have
wasn't
been one
playing.
of those cases where
Yeah.
where it just showed you what he was perceived as, especially since he was, if you're doing business over the internet or over the phone and you don't meet the person, talk to
Yeah.
the person
No, he
face to
went and met him
face.
face to face
Wow.
and shook hands and that did the deal, you know?
That was a con artist, a damn good con
Yeah,
artist.
exactly. He was the extreme of this. So
Yeah.
as I say, I wasn't held responsible or whatever. Yeah, do you
But
know what
you
I mean?
feel
But
responsible.
yeah, well, I just felt annoyed with myself,
Yeah. And
And
that shook your
there were
confidence.
certain warning cards there that were read in a warning way, but just didn't see that King of Wands doing such a good job of being so charming and charismatic. Just went, yes, trust him.
That shakes that shakes a reader for a long time. But I'm so proud of you for just getting back up on top of it. A lot of readers would have
I
stopped.
think if that had happened to me earlier on, that would have permanently put me off.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it happens while you're reading, remember it happens to the best of us. It happens to all of us. It's just not many of us are willing to share the experience like Mandy just was. This is to let you know, don't give up. Um, don't you're going to go through a time period where you're beating yourself up. I should have been better or could have been better. Just keep going and learn from the experience, just like everything else in life. Just like everything else in life. Mandy is a phenomenal reader, one of the best
Nobody,
I've ever met.
probably no one will have a reading with me now after they watch this. Once
I
comes up,
think more people will because you're willing to make to say, hey, yeah, we all make mistakes, but you're also willing to learn from that mistake and move on to become a better reader. So, how many readers will not even acknowledge that, right? So, I think that makes you a better reader
um,
because you're willing to learn.
yeah, I mean, it's very, I mean, it's a funny thing, isn't it, doing a reading because it's not even about ego. It's not kind of like, it's very nice when you get like the feedback to say, oh, you got it spot on, it was right,
Yeah.
blah, 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 and I just genuinely, I just want to help people. I want to I don't get a kick out of giving somebody bad news and then it
No.
turns out my bad news was correct.
And there are readers who do that.
Yeah, no. I just, I want to be able to give good news and I want the good news to be correct, so
I think I think yeah, I probably would have done the same way because I would have s- uh, it's very difficult for me to give people bad news. I do it because I've learned to, because things do come back and bite you on the ass. They do. If you pussyfoot around or pretend to be, but it's very difficult for me to do it because I get involved with the people I read with. I actually care about
yeah,
the person. They're a human being to me and I want good things.
yeah,
And I still have a tough time making sure that, when I have to say something that isn't quite so good, when it's not a happy ending or if it's a hard road ahead for them, it takes me a while to be able to put it into words, um, to put it right, because I don't want to come across as callous and I don't want to tell anything bad. But
do you think so if you say to someone this is a bad idea, I don't think you should do it, but they really really want to do it, a lot of them are going to do it
a
anyway.
lot of them are going to do it anyway. A lot of them are going to do it anyway. I had issues with that, Mandy. It wasn't until I don't know, not even 10 years ago that I finally, and my husband helped me with this a lot. I've had some situations where I have stopped reading, either because of the things that happened that came true that I didn't want to read for, and I was forced to, allowed people to force me to do readings I didn't want to do. Never, never. Or because of people's reactions to what I can do that were not good. People are afraid, especially in the 80s and early 90s. People were afraid of the the way that things would happen when I'd read for them. Not that anything was spooky, but it wasn't normal. You know what I mean? So
Right.
there are several times that I've put down my cards because I've seen all of that and because people don't follow the advice. But it was my husband who helped me figure out we are the messengers. Our
Mm,
job is to deliver the message. The client's job is to do with what that message as they see fit. As
exactly.
long as we deliver that message and they have the information to make those informed decisions, that's up to them. They're grown, they're going to do what they're going to do. And if they come back and say, "Oh, you were right. I should have listened to you," that well, what do you know? You
Yeah.
know?
I've had that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you've had that way more often than
Yeah.
just yeah. But there are so many times where people just don't listen. They
Well,
come back and
they're only having the reading in the hope that they're going to hear what they want to hear.
yeah, or
But
they'll yeah.
having said that, I do readings where I will say I don't think this person is for you or whatever, and they'll go, I knew this. You've just confirmed it.
Exactly.
That happens
Yeah.
a lot.
And there's so many times where, you have bad news or something that's a little harsh to say. They already know that. They
Yeah,
just aren't acknowledging it. The tarot can help people acknowledge and understand and proceed in a way that makes more sense because verification or validation or knowing what a situation you're walking into is half the battle of winning it.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But I think going back to the suit of wands, the whole suit of wands, it's a very, very sort of action packed, outward energy. It is about kind of, now I know like you get kind of more difficult cards, like say the tenor ones, but whatever, but generally speaking, it is all about if you want this situation to kind of materialize, you need to kind of do something about it. I don't think the suit of wands in general is about just sit back and wait and wish for it and it'll all come to you. It is all about encouraging people to kind of do what it takes to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but watch it when you get to the extremes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And that
just
could have very well just been saying, in hindsight, it's so easy to read in
yeah,
hindsight, people. In hindsight, it may have been saying that instead of your client's partner going to meet this man, maybe your client might have should gone to meet him, or in pairing with that justice card, maybe your client might have done a little more research on this particular individual.
yeah.
So hindsight, 2020, real easy to read the cards.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, the warning cards were definitely there, and even the overall outcome was
Yeah,
quite. It was quite sort of mediocre sort of thing, or whatever it was. It was just you. Sometimes you just do a reading, and one card pings out as the big star player, and this is such a big star player. You know, this King of Wands, and it was just the wrong star player for the wrong question in the wrong position. It distorted the whole reading.
yeah, he did. He
And
did.
it,
And he was definitely a star player. just not in a positive way,
No.
which,
He was too. He did too much of a good job. That King of Wands.
yeah,
He fooled
too
us all.
much. A charmer, a con man. So don't always get trapped in the, not you, but them, don't always get trapped in the con man concept of the King of
It
Wands,
also
but
made
be
me question.
aware.
Yeah, made me question about the reading in reverse, because we very much are team. We're on team read reverse, and you
Yes.
get these readers who feel it's not necessary to read reverse, that they'll see the shadow side of the card even in the upright.
Through
You know,
intuition.
and I've always been like, I don't have to worry about the shadow side because I know it will come up reverse. If, or you know, like for example, this card, I don't need to worry about the shadow side because I trust that it would come up reverse if I'm meant to see that. So it made me question all of that as well.
We might even do a podcast on that. I'm very firm in the belief of reading
Oh,
reversals,
so am I. So am
but
I. This was a one-off. It was
I
unfortunate.
have seen cards in the upright position that have struck me as what would be during a reading more in the reverse. I've seen it happen, and I usually trust it. Um, but I find when I don't trust my intuition is when it bites me on the ass. And I find that enthusiasm for a client, wanting to see the best for the client, is something I constantly have to battle. It doesn't go away. It's something I have to always be aware of.
We should do a podcast on that at
I
some
think
point.
we just did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But
no,
we
I love
should.
reading in reverse. I love reading in reverse. I get so much out of reversals, and I get things out of reversals that I would never ever get if it was upright. Not
Yeah.
is
And I
not.
know plenty of really good readers that refuse to read in reverse. One of them is one of the most respected readers in my eyes of anybody. So I I don't know if I can say her name or not, but you know her. She's from Brazil.
Oh, yes.
She does not read with reversals,
Wow.
and she is one of the most incredible readers I've ever met, but her intuition is so finely tuned, she could probably read without the daggone
Well, I'm
cards.
just going to say, does she actually need the
She
cards?
doesn't even need the cards. Um, so it doesn't, I think it's another one of those cases, if it works for you, it's right for you. I couldn't imagine reading without reversals. I would feel terribly limited.
I know.
But if it doesn't work for you, you don't complicate matters. Intuition just gets slowed down when things are complicated. Use what works best for you to let your intuition flow the best. That's all. So, but I prefer reversals. We'll have to do podcasts on card reversals someday. Isn't that what you just said? So, wow, that was a tough one because of how, yeah, and you'll probably have some anger or animosity toward him for a while. I still
Yeah,
dislike the Hierophant.
yeah. But I have very good reason not to like him, and I do feel he let me down. I do feel he deceived me, and
He did.
I am very on my guard now every time he comes up. And I'd be quite happy if he never shows his face again in one of my readings. Yeah, I don't like him. On that note, I'm going to go.
Wands. Even that's like passion against him. Passion. Bye.
See you, Sharon. Bye.